Yo, crypto nation and mining family. Crypto nation and mining family. What's going on? Of course, like always, it's not financial advice. Yo, crypto nation and mining family. What's going on out there? So, as you guys know, I have that appreciation for that Bitmain Antminer hardware. And I know, I'm an evil person because I like ASICs. But it's not that you're an evil person if you like ASICs or whatnot, or you're going against the whole mining industry. It's just you're trying to get the most efficient hardware for the least amount of money. And having the biggest amount of hash power, right? So whenever I was wanting to mine some Ethereum Classic, because one of the things that I like about Ethereum Classic is, well, code is law. Unlike Ethereum, which they rolled back the DAO hack. It wasn't Ethereum's fault. It was the DAO, and they had a bad smart contract that allowed them to allowed somebody to have an exploit. So unfortunately, it's like I would rather support somebody that believes that code is law. They stand behind the code that they wrote because there was nothing wrong with what they did. So as I was sitting there trying to get into Ethereum Classic, I was like, well, I could build myself an RX 580 rig, right? 8 gigabytes of RAM in there, good to go, right? All up till I started pricing stuff out. So I was looking into the GPUs, a motherboard, power supply, some RAM, a CPU, the typical stuff you need to make any PC. But now I just need to do it with, instead of one graphics card, I want to do 8 graphics cards, right? And whenever I was first doing that, I was looking at the hash power to wattage to price point. Hash power on an RX 580 rig was about 230 to 245 mega hash a second at around 850 to 900 watts. So depending on how you were optimizing, which graphics cards you were going with, and which miner you were using, it made a huge difference. So while I was sitting there doing the price comparison on that, I was looking into the E3s, which that one's for the hash algorithm. And that one was, to build an RX 580 rig, you would have been looking at $2,200 to $2,400, depending on which cards you got, and if you can find them on deal and all that good stuff. I mean, you'd be looking at the high side of $2,500 to build an 8-card RX 580 rig. Now, that's no longer the case because that's older technology now. So your cost to entry on that is a whole lot less. Considering you can pick up these cards now for, $100 bucks, maybe $150, depending on if you can find a good deal on them or not. So at that point in time, whenever I was looking into mining Ethereum Classic, the graphics cards were going for $300-$400 a piece. So I mean, your cost to get into it was a lot higher. So I started looking into the ASIC side of it, just because I know that it's an all-in-one module. It's the unit and a power supply. You don't have to buy anything else. So whenever I was looking into the very first E3 Antminer that I got, I was looking at $2,000 shipped. That was to my house, $2,000. So I'm already saving money by buying the E3 Antminers at that time. Now they're discontinued. You can't find them whatsoever unless you're finding them from a miner like myself who's selling them as second hand. So I never really thought about it whenever I was getting them, if there was going to be an end of life on there, was there going to be another model on these. They were very efficient hardware. On 110, They utilize 716 watts, so we're already about 100 watts less than running an RX 580 rig. Okay. And then myself, I prefer to run this stuff on the 220, and on 220, Bitmain's power supplies go into efficiency mode. So instead of utilizing 765 watts, I now use 715 watts. So I'm even that much more efficient running it on 220. Guys, everything runs a little bit more efficiently on 220. Everything does. Unfortunately, with regular PCs, whether with GPUs, the GPU is going to use the same amount of wattage because it's not being directly fed the power like an Antminer will be. So an Antminer will actually be affected more if you're running 110 versus 220. Straight out. So whenever I was sitting there, doing all the mathematics behind it, it made more sense to load up on E3 Antminers, which, that puts me to be an early adopter on the E3 Antminers, and I've ROI'd a long time ago because I was early enough of an adopter. So I got my Ethereum Classic onto the deal, bought more equipment, that ROI'd, bought more equipment, so I've got equipment, not Bitcoin. That's kind of the life of a miner, right? Most people just don't get it. So fast forward to a few months ago, whenever I was sitting there and just doing my daily checks, looking at how all the equipment's running, is it glitching out on me and all that good stuff. One day I noticed that I popped up onto the pool, and at the time I only had one E3 miner running. Since then I've got two now. I had a whole farm of them, but over time I've switched out what I was mining, what I wasn't mining, and all that good stuff. And some of it I knew, like last year, that we were going to be starting to slowly get to end of life on the E3 Antminers because of the DAG file. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with that, the DAG file is how much memory is required to mine on there, especially when using a GPU. So 3 gigabyte cards are no longer able to mine on Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. 4 gigabyte cards are soon, graphics cards are soon to be out. And then your 8 gigabytes are what's left. So knowing that the modules that are on each one of the SoC chips, because like the E3, basically it's mimicking GPUs. So it's got an SoC chip, system over chip, and it's got a whole bunch of memory module clusters all the way around it. And my theory is that this is running a 32-bit OS on there, which will not allow the memory to unlock itself to its full potential. If they can put if you were able to flash on there a 64-bit OS on there, it would probably start mining properly once again. So a couple of months ago, I looked at my pools and I noticed that my E3 Antminer on Ethereum Classic was doing like it would have been lucky to see it mining at 20 mega hash a second. So I effectively lost 180 mega hash. So I thought at first, oh man, I must have had a power surge or something like that, and it took out the controller board. So I went to go reflash the controller board through the Antminer's dashboard, and it wouldn't let me do it. I tried to do it on a SD card. Now, if you're going to do it off of an SD card, guys, you need a 4 gigabyte or an 8 gigabyte SD card. Anything bigger, and the E3 will have a heart attack over it. It'll corrupt the file on there whenever it goes to download, just because it's looking at the whole SD card, something with how it does its flashing off the SD card. So I, like anybody, went looking for the OS, and at the time there was no updated OS on there. So I'm trying to basically reflash it with the same OS that's on there. And because like Bitmain did not make it very clear of what you needed to do, where that software really was. So I went into looking for the firmware and basically found the same exact firmware that was on there. So I tried flashing it. It didn't do anything. I put it onto an SD card, and the red and green light that's indicating good or errored out lights just stay illuminated. And through the instructions it says put the SD card in there, flash it, and then whenever it's done, those red and green light would start blinking at you a little bit. And never did. I let it sit there for like 5 minutes, never did anything, right? So I just put everything back in there, and I was like, you know what? I wonder if, just for some strange coincidence, because at the time I didn't realize that it would hit the DAG file limit. I'm like, let me put on Ethereum and see if it actually will hash on there. Maybe it's just Ethereum Classic. Put it on Ethereum, starts mining right away. I'm like, oh, son of a. So I'm like, you know what? I wonder. And I had two other ones that, two other E3s that were basically broken. And I'm like, I wonder if I can make one more good one out of the parts collection that I have. So I went through the hashing boards, found out which hashing boards were damaged, swapped them into the one unit, put that onto Ethereum Classic, errored out the same way. I was like, cool, I got it to start working. At least it sees all the hashing boards, but it's doing the same funky error. Where if you would like to see it, like it's got some significations, double zero saying that the hashing board's good and it's mining away. Double X means that it's errored out. And then dash dash would be it's like damaged. So I'm sitting here seeing X's. It's just X, 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 X. I'm like, what in the world? So I'm like, you know what? I wonder if it's just Ethereum Classic. So I put the one that I fixed onto Ethereum. Starts mining normally. 200 mega hash, 715 watts. Yes! So I was sitting there and going, well, hopefully I can keep mining away on this. Looks like these are going to be glorified doorstops soon, right? So I had heard, once the DAG limit hit too big for Ethereum Classic, I started hearing rumors of Bitmain coming out with an updated firmware for it. I'm sure they already had this, and they've already given this firmware out to bigger mining facilities to test it all out on. At least I hope so. So, you know, fast forward to the 10th. Today is, actually, no, not the 10th. It would have been yesterday. So the 9th is whenever I noticed that the hash rate had dropped on Ethereum, my Ethereum, my hash rate, and realized that it was doing the same thing again. So it's back down to doing a whole whopping. Let me pull this up here. So bam, you can see it right there, guys. One's doing the normal 200 mega hash, and rig 3 is doing 34 mega hash as we speak, guys. So yeah, yay, super awesome, right? And whenever you come up onto Bitmain, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to find that updated OS on there. So let me go over to support. Awesome. Get into here. And you'll see the technical support, and it'll say installation plus firmware in here. So you go in here, product guide and firmware, boom. And you're basically just looking for your miner. So we know it's an Ethash miner, and it's an E3, boom. And so you would download this .gz file, and the .gz file is a Linux compression file. Yes, you can download this onto your Windows. It's not going to hurt nothing. It's not going to do anything. It's just like sitting there and downloading a 7-zip file. But this is for Linux. So I got this onto my computer, and I'm like, well, shoot, I want to sit there and flash this. So I came over to my ASIC, and you'll see right here that here it is. It was July 4th of 2018 was the last time that this thing had seen any kind of a firmware update, and that's when I got these. So it's like a little bit before July, or right around July is whenever I grabbed these. So you can tell that I've got first gen on this stuff. At least for this one. The first gen was the 180 mega hash. Mine is the 190 mega hash variant. Basically, it's a little bit better tuning on it. But I had gotten it in 2018, very beginning of it. So I mean, I've had enough time to basically ROI these units. But you'll notice that it's got the CG Miner version is 4.9.0, and if you come over to my other one that I did fix already, you'll see that it's got the file version of August 6th of 2018, and then I've got the CG Miner version of 5.4.0. So definitely have a newer firmware already on here. But whenever you come up over here and you're on your dashboard, now I'm assuming you guys already know how to log into it and you already know how to kind of mess with this. You'd come over to upgrade, and you can keep your settings so you don't lose your pool configurations on there, your wallet file, and all that good stuff. And you come over to here, it says choose file, and I've already got that downloaded onto here, as you can see here. Got everything right there. You just double click and you'll see that it pulls it up into the dashboard, and then you hit the flash image. It's going to ask you, really replace the running firmware. Yeah, okay. Looks like it's doing everything right, and then bam! 413 error, request entity too large. And that is something that I've had some issues with for a little while now. And of course, I turned that off, and I forgot what the I shouldn't have closed out that. Oopsie. And all right, cool. 237. Right. Turn back on. Yeah, 237. So, and of course, whenever you're going into it, you're just typing in your local on there, and bam, I can get back into this. No harm, no foul. And as you can see here, it just errored out and came right back on with the same settings that it had before. And you can see here that I've only got 10% memory left on here, 90% utilization. That's awesome, right? Where on the one that I fixed, I've got 23% utilization, 77% used. So you can see that I've got a little bit more life on this one than I do on this one. And of course, this is the one that is hashing at 34 mega hash. Is the one with the old OS on here. So unfortunately, that no longer makes this 1E3 Antminer viable to utilize. And whenever I was sitting here, I'm like, I tried to load up that file onto here. Now, originally, I was only able to find the original OS, and I tried to just reflash it on this SD card, and it didn't want to take. Cat, I love my cat, but right now, bad time. But I've tried to put that the old OS onto here, and it didn't take. I didn't realize that you have to unpack it out of the .gz file, and then you got to unpack it one more time out of the .tar file. This way you've got all the files unpacked all out of it, and the miner probably would have taken it in no problem. I didn't realize that because I've never flashed one of the ASICs before. So doing research on it today, trying to make this thing work so that I don't have doorstops, basically, started digging into it a little more. Now, whenever you're downloading the new E3 firmware, it also comes with an installation guide, and that's pretty much right here, guys. So when you download this is kind of giving you a little step-by-step on how to utilize the E3 miner, period. This is everything you need to know. Everything from Bitmain. What you're looking at, what it does, all that good stuff. And you can see that, 707 watts plus or minus 4%. And that's on DC, what it pulls DC input. AC, you'll see a high side of 760 watts plus or minus 4%. So I mean, you get some good specs readouts on this stuff. Noise is 76 decibels when it's first starting up. Afterwards, it gets nice and quiet. You can have a conversation next to it. I don't know if you guys can hear this on my microphone right now or not. Certainly let me know in the comments below if you can hear the E3 back there screaming away. And then here are the hashing boards. You got to apply power to those, but when you're flashing the controller board here with the SD card, you got to pull these ribbon cables out of either the hashing boards or off of the controller board, and then the fans too. This way it's just the controller board. Don't even plug in Ethernet into it whenever you're flashing. It doesn't need any of that stuff. But you can come down here and gives you all that good information of what you need. Configuration, monitoring, what everything means on there. 0 is okay, X indicates errors, and dash indicates dead as a doorknob. Then you come down a little bit further and it says checking your firmware version. So you go in the System Overview tab like we've already been doing, and you can see that right from here. This is the System Overview tab. And you'll see that, make this a little bigger, bam. Their pictures are really horrible and blurry. It's not my computer, it's theirs. And then you go down and it says upgrading your system. Make sure that the E3 server remains powered during the upgrade process. If power fails before the upgrade is completed, you will need to return it to Bitmain for repair. You basically brick it. You'll I've never experienced that, but if you brick it, you'll have to replace the controller board. You don't have to send the whole unit in for repair. These things have only got I think 3 months worth of warranty on them, period. Afterwards, they know what you're doing to it. You're going to be running them ragged. They're not there to try to warranty the conditions of which you're keeping them in. So there's that. And then whenever you click on upgrade, it'll ask you, hey, do you really want to do this? You sit yes, and then it'll reboot. And that's what you guys watched me do just a second ago. Going into the upgrade, I tried choosing the file, and it 413 errored, saying that the file format's the file's too large to be accepted into the Antminer. So, therefore, there had to be another way to do this, and that's where I tried to load it up onto here. I uncompressed the GZ file, I uncompressed the tar file, tried to put it onto here, and whenever you put it in, like I said, it's supposed to blink the red and green light on here. And realistically, it never did. Whenever I powered it up, the red and green light just went bink, illuminated. So I just sat there waiting for it to, stay illuminated and just start blinking. Never did. Just stay illuminated. And those were the only lights that it was actually lighting up on the whole controller board. There are a bunch of other lights on there, but it was only lighting up the error light and the OK light. So I let it sit there for like 5 minutes, did nothing. This process is supposed to take like up to 90 seconds. I let it sit there for 5 minutes and did nothing. So I started doing some more rooting around, trying to figure this out. And that's whenever I came across this from Bitme. How to upgrade E3 firmware via SD card. So this was updated in December of 2018. They say that they recommend doing this from the website, but there is another method, which is doing it through the SD card. SD card is a method is suitable for the E3, but do not attempt to replace this method on other miners, as it may damage them. So this does not work on everything all the time, guys. The requirements is going to be a micro SD card, recommended capacity of 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes. Larger capacity, like if you get the 32 gigabyte SD cards, you might start coming up with errors. So try to find one of the older 4 gig or 8 gig, just so that you don't have any issues. You can put all the programs on there through Windows, so you don't have to be running Linux to do this. And if you see here, it says choose the firmware ES, the E3 dash SD dash the numbers and then dash pool.zip. So I've got myself a zip file, and it's like E3 firmware, download firmware here. So I went to go click on that, and it brings you right to here. And that E3 SD is right at the top. You can see that it was 4/15 of 2019 that it was published. So you can download that here. And then once you download that, you put it on your computer, and then you can put that zip file onto your SD card and then just unzip it on the SD card. And it'll pull out all the little files out of it. Once you do that, then at that time, you can sit there and take this SD card, unhook everything off of... Cat, no, stop. My cat, he wants to sit on my lap and cuddle. But you would sit there and you put this SD card into the SD card reader on the controller board, unhook the hashing boards, unhook the fan headers off, and then power this on. And it took maybe like 35 seconds, and then I started watching the red and green light start blinking. And all the other lights on the controller board were on, flashing like it was mining away, but it was programming itself. Once I did that, I came back up over to here, and I saw that I had the 5.4.0 on there. I'm like, Eureka! Yes! So I started loading up Ethereum Classic on here, and I'm like, let it rip. Yeah, eat some of that Ethereum Classic. And after, it's like usually this thing will take anywhere between like 6.5 minutes to like 7.5 minutes, and it starts mining. Because it's got to download a DAG file onto the unit and all that good stuff. Basically, the machine's got to verify the blockchain before it can start mining on it. After it gets done doing that, happy mining. But with Ethereum Classic, after about 12-13 minutes, you hear the fans turn down, and the error list just comes out on it. So I was like, okay, let me try to put on this firmware now. And lo and behold, after I put the newer firmware on there, all of a sudden this would actually, I was able to utilize it with the upgrade here. It would actually work. Problem that I see now is that even though it said it worked, I don't know how many times I'd have to try to load it up on here to make it take, because it won't take through the SD card in any way, shape, or form. So it only takes it through the dashboard. There is no loading it up onto an SD card and popping it in there, guys. So you're stuck right there. Now, I even tried to take the other firmware, left that on here, and put the new firmware on here. Maybe, it'll see it and take it. No. I don't know if there's something that I'm missing or anything like that. So if any of you guys have flashed the newest firmware from Bitmain onto there, let me get a hold of me and let me know how you did that, because yeah, I haven't been able to get it to take in any way, shape, or form, unfortunately, at this point in time. So I had it trying to mine away on Ethereum Classic, and it just spitting out errors. I'm lucky if it was doing 6 mega hash a second on Ethereum Classic. And for 715 watts, not worth it at all. So, yep, unfortunately, I had to had to put it back onto Ethereum. And thankfully, didn't even have that switched over yet. Oh no. All right, here. I don't know why it did that. That was weird. So, but whenever I had downloaded it onto here, it didn't change any of this information. I was expecting that when I flashed the newest firmware on there, that it would signify that it was on here. I don't know how many times it's going to want me to try to upload it on here before it takes, but you can't do it through SD card in any way, shape, or form. So I put it back up onto Ethereum, and it's been very happy. Like I said, the other day, the hash rate dropped on this thing because it hit its limitation of how much DAG file it can actually handle. So on Ethereum Classic, it's still an issue, but on Ethereum, it seems like it's fixed. Now, I'm going to be testing out with the other Antminer here now if just putting the newer firmware on here fixes it, because if it's just the not the newest, but the last firmware that came out last year, if that's what's allowing me to mine on Ethereum over here, because that's what the file is it's this one. It's not the new one, but I'd like to sit there and see if just updating this to the new CG miner version, if that's the fix for mining on Ethereum, or do I actually have to do that upgrade so that I could do the upgrade from here with the latest one to make it start mining again on Ethereum. But again, it's not working on Ethereum Classic still. So unfortunately, that will continue to be a problem, unless one of you guys out there have flashed over the new firmware on there, and there's like a hidden secret that I'm not aware of. I have reached out to Bitmain on this to see if there's something that I'm missing. So I've got a help ticket in with them to see if there's any other further problems, and hopefully I'll be able to get this all rectified. But what's really nice about the how to upgrade the E3 firmware, now I'll leave all the links for everything down below, so you guys don't have to do all the hunting around like I did today. I'll make it nice and easy and consolidated. So whenever you pull out the controller board, this is where the SD card slides into, and then these are little what they call jumper pins. So the jumper pin 4, they want you to move it from, it covers these 2 pins originally. And they're going to want you to move it to the forward position. So it's going to cover the middle pin still, and then the forward pin. And then when you're done flashing it, you take the same jumper and you move it back to cover the back pin and the middle pin. This basically, when you move the jumper pin forward, will put it into like a relearn mode. This process only takes up to 90 seconds. Whenever I was trying to do it originally, I left this thing in there for 5 minutes and it did nothing. So once you have the right firmware going in there, for me, I swear it took maybe 30 seconds and the red and green light started flashing like it was supposed to, all like the instructions would say. And this is the jumper pin in the stock position right here. If it doesn't do it the first time, sometimes they're known to occasionally fail upon reflash. Might have to do it a couple of times. Now I have tried to flash this one with the newest firmware like about 3 or 4 different times. I don't know how many times I'd have to try to reflash this thing to make it take. But at this point in time, it's not taking, which it's fine. It's fine. At least I have it mining again on Ethereum. So these aren't just sitting around collecting dust, being a beautiful doorstop, or they're a bulky paperweight. If you had a strong breeze and a lot of papers, this will help. If you guys are wanting to know where I got all this information, again, I'll have this all down below so that you guys don't have to hunt all this info down for yourselves. If you're having any kind of questions or any kind of problems trying to flash your firmware onto here, guys, certainly hit me up in Discord. Links are all down below. If you'd like to maybe support this channel a little bit, I have links to the Patreon, and you can go into DCA Your Mining, and that kind of supports me and my home dog, Crypto Mikkel. And if you guys are, wanting to have another person, another great YouTuber to watch for all your mining needs, check out Crypto Mikkel on Crypto Mikkel Designs on YouTube, and that's my partner in crime with all of this mining stuff, as they would say. So the newest firmware, I'm not sure if it's loading up on my stuff properly or not. I'll find out here whenever I go to do it on my other one. I'm going to do this one in just small little steps, because I was originally just trying to get this first one of mine on Ethereum Classic once again, because the new firmware, if you read here, it says extends the E3 miner life, fixes corner case that E3 miner abnormal operation on ETC. So I don't think they fixed that. It's still acting really wonky on Ethereum Classic. So obviously not all of this is tested. I think they just tested this out on Ethereum and was like, oh, yep, good to go, let it rip, and they need to do a little bit more testing and development on this. Hopefully they'll come out with another fix for this, hopefully. Otherwise, the E3s are getting close to their end of life for especially mining Ethereum, and definitely Ethereum Classic. It's done on Ethereum Classic. I haven't been able to mine Ethereum Classic on mine in a few months. But again, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to try getting this to work on Ethereum on Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. And I'm going to do this with the older firmware and see if that makes the difference, if that's what the difference is on this. And that would mean that the new firmware is severely broken. So stay tuned with me on that one, guys. I'll give you some updates on the next video for that. If you got any comments or questions, certainly drop them in down below, or hit me up in the Discord. I'd be more than happy to help any of you out with any of your questions. And yo, guys, since you're down there making comments and looking up at information, smash that Lizzie like button, guys. Hit the bell notification and subscribe if you haven't. That all helps me get all that information out. And guys, if you can, share this, in any place that you hang out the most. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're at, if you could share this video on your favorite media, that would help me out, get this knowledge out to all of you awesome people out there. And like always, I'll definitely catch you all on the next one. Peace.